You didn't arrive at this video by accident, and that is the first thing you need to understand, because there are titles you simply click, watch for a moment, and forget. But then there are others that feel frontal, as if they are not just trying to get your attention, but are actually confronting you, almost as if they are pulling you back toward something you have been avoiding for years. This is one of those moments. Maybe you expected a gentle reflection, something comforting, something that would quietly confirm that you have lived your faith correctly all your life. But what we are about to enter is something far more serious, far more personal, and for that very reason, far more freeing. Because if you are over 60 years old, there is a question you can no longer keep postponing. When you approach Holy Communion, are you truly spiritually prepared, or have you become so used to routine that you no longer examine what once would have deeply shaken your conscience? I ask you to listen differently, not as someone casually watching a video while doing something else, but as someone receiving a warning meant to protect them from something they do not yet fully see. Because in my years as a confessor, I have witnessed something that still stays with me. An elderly man over 70 years old, well known in his parish for his regular attendance at Mass, his devotion, his rosary, and his reputation as a good and faithful Catholic, once knelt in the confessional with a broken voice. There was nothing dramatic about the moment in the eyes of the world, but spiritually, it was deeply serious. And what he said is something I will never forget. Father, I think I've been receiving communion in a state of mortal sin for 30 years without knowing it. 30 years approaching the altar, 30 years receiving the Eucharist, 30 years without realizing the seriousness of what was happening in his soul. And if this could happen to someone like him, then the question is no longer whether it happens, but how many people are living in the same condition without realizing it. This brings us to a truth that is uncomfortable but necessary. Most of these situations do not come from bad intentions, but from a lack of clarity. It is not always that people want to deceive God or live against their faith, but rather that they were never clearly taught what it truly means to receive communion worthily. In an age where spiritual language has been softened, many essential concepts have lost their weight: mortal sin, state of grace, sacrilege, deep examination of conscience. Everything has become vague, emotional, and overly comfortable, and as a result, many sincere believers approach the altar with good intentions, but with a conscience that is no longer fully awake. This is why this season of reflection cannot be treated like any other. Not because life becomes harder with age, but because time itself does not automatically heal what has never been truly addressed. As years pass, wounds settle, mistakes are justified, silence becomes habit, and what once caused inner pain slowly stops hurting, not because it was healed, but because it was buried. And what is buried does not disappear, it simply becomes invisible. There are people who have built decades of spiritual life on top of unexamined layers of habit, walking steadily over ground that has never truly been brought into the light. This is why we must remember something essential before going further. The Eucharist is not a symbol, not a cultural tradition, not a social ritual. The Church has always taught with absolute clarity that it is the real, true, and substantial presence of Jesus Christ, his body, his blood, his soul, and his divinity. Not a representation of him, but him fully present. And if that is true, then the question becomes unavoidable. In what state must a soul be in order to receive God himself? St. Paul speaks about this with a seriousness that often feels uncomfortable today because we are no longer used to being spiritually confronted by Scripture. He warns that whoever eats and drinks unworthily becomes accountable for the body and blood of the Lord. This is not given to create fear, but to awaken awareness. Because the goal is not to live in panic, but to live in truth. Fear pushes people away from God, but formed conscience brings them back to him. The Church is equally clear in her teaching. Anyone who is conscious of grave sin must not receive communion without first going to confession. And here is where many sincere people begin to struggle, because they have reduced grave sin only to extreme cases, visible scandals, or obvious moral failures. But moral life is far deeper than that. There are sins that are silent, repeated, normalized over time, and yet still serious in their weight before God. The Catechism is precise when it defines mortal sin: grave matter, full knowledge, and deliberate consent. But in real life, especially in later years, something subtle often happens. Conscience becomes less sensitive, not out of rebellion, but out of habit. Actions that have been repeated for decades stop being questioned, not because they have changed in nature, but because the soul has grown used to them. And this is where reflection becomes necessary, not to condemn, but to awaken. because even deeply faithful people can slowly drift into a state where their conscience is no longer fully alert. And that is one of the most serious dangers of spiritual life. Sincerity does not always guarantee clarity. A person can genuinely believe they are in good standing before God, while still carrying unresolved areas of life that have never been fully examined. At this point, the focus is no longer theoretical, it becomes personal, concrete, and deeply connected to a lifetime of choices, habits, and unspoken realities. And that is where the real examination begins. There is a reason this becomes so important with age, because life does not simply add years to us, it also adds layers. Experiences accumulate, memories settle, habits become fixed, and over time the soul can begin to accept things it once would have questioned without hesitation. What once felt clearly right or wrong can slowly become blurred, not because truth has changed, but because our sensitivity to it has been gradually shaped by repetition, compromise, or silence. And this is where many people reach a dangerous misunderstanding. They assume that if something no longer bothers their conscience, it must no longer matter spiritually. But conscience is not always a perfect mirror. It can become tired, influenced, or simply privy to what it sees every day. This is why the Church does not leave these matters to personal feeling alone. Moral truth is not defined by emotional comfort, but by objective reality. Something does not become less serious simply because it has become familiar. A wound does not stop being a wound because the pain has dulled over time. And in the same way, spiritual conditions do not become safe simply because they are no longer emotionally disturbing. This is especially relevant for those who have lived long lives of faith, because familiarity with religious practice can sometimes create the illusion of spiritual safety, even when deeper examination has not been done for years. One of the most common spiritual risks in later life is not rebellion, but routine. People continue to attend Mass, continue to pray familiar prayers, continue to identify as believers, and from the outside everything appears stable. But internally, something subtle can happen. Reflection is replaced with habit, and awareness is replaced with assumption. When this shift happens quietly over decades, a person can remain active in religious life while no longer engaging deeply with the state of their soul. And this is precisely where confusion about communion can arise without any conscious intention to deceive. It is important to understand that the issue here is not a lack of faith. Many of the people in this situation believe sincerely, pray sincerely, and desire to do what is right. The difficulty lies in formation. If no one ever clearly explained how serious certain conditions are before receiving the Eucharist, or if those teachings were heard once but never deeply reflected upon again, then over time they can fade into the background of religious life. What remains is practice without examination, participation without reflection, and devotion without clarity. This is why moments of honest self-examination become so crucial. Because spiritual life is not maintained automatically, it requires ongoing awareness. Just as physical health can decline silently without regular checkups, the interior life can also drift without deliberate reflection. And in many cases, people only begin to see this when something disrupts their routine. An illness, a confession after many years, or a moment of deep personal reflection that suddenly reveals how long certain areas of life have remained unexamined. In pastoral experience, it is often in these moments that individuals express a kind of quiet shock, not because they stopped believing, but because they realize they have not been looking closely at their spiritual condition for a long time. And this realization is not meant to create despair, rather it opens the door to clarity. Because the purpose of truth is not to condemn, but to restore awareness where it has faded. At the center of this entire reflection stands a simple but weighty reality. The Eucharist is not something ordinary. It is not symbolic participation, nor is it merely a communal ritual. It is understood within Christian teaching as a direct encounter with Christ himself. And when something is understood at that level of seriousness, it naturally demands a corresponding seriousness in preparation. Not perfection, but honesty. Not fear, but awareness. Not anxiety, but responsibility. And this is where the deeper question begins to form more clearly. If the gift is so profound, then how carefully should one prepare to receive it? This question becomes even more pressing when we consider how easily the human mind can normalize what should still be treated with reverence. Over time, repeated actions lose their emotional intensity. What once felt deeply significant can slowly become part of a routine schedule. And in spiritual life, this is especially dangerous, because what is most sacred can begin to feel ordinary simply through repetition. A person may no longer feel the weight of what they are doing, not because the reality has changed, but because familiarity has softened their perception of it. This is why St. Paul's warning carries such enduring seriousness. He is not speaking in abstract terms, but addressing a real spiritual condition that can affect anyone who approaches sacred things without discernment. His words are not meant to isolate or terrify, but to awaken responsibility. Because when something divine is treated without awareness, the issue is not the absence of belief, but the absence of understanding. And misunderstanding sacred reality can quietly shape the way a person lives their entire spiritual life. The Church in her teaching continues to emphasize that awareness matters. It is not enough to simply participate outwardly in religious practice. There must also be interior alignment with what that practice signifies. This is why confession exists not as a formality, but as a serious moment of reconciliation and clarity. It is the place where the believer is invited to bring truth into the open, especially those areas that have been left unexamined for long periods of time. And for many people, especially in later years, this becomes the first moment in decades where they truly reflect on their spiritual condition with depth and honesty. What often emerges in these moments is not rebellion against God, but surprise at oneself. Many sincere believers discover that they have carried unresolved moral questions for years without ever fully addressing them, not because they rejected faith, but because life became busy, habits became stable, and reflection slowly decreased. Over time, what was once intentional faith practice became routine participation, and with that shift, certain important distinctions were no longer clearly considered. This is particularly important when discussing preparation for communion, because the issue is not whether someone feels worthy in a subjective sense, but whether they have taken the time to honestly examine their life in light of objective moral teaching. Feelings alone are not sufficient indicators of spiritual readiness. A person can feel at peace and still be carrying unresolved spiritual matters. At the same time, someone can feel unworthy and yet be in a state of sincere repentance and readiness for reconciliation. This is why formation of conscience is so essential. It helps bring clarity where emotion alone cannot. And yet, in many lives, this formation weakens over time, not intentionally, but gradually. Without regular reflection, without deep examination, and without occasional serious spiritual review, even faithful individuals can drift into patterns where important aspects of their moral life are no longer actively considered. What remains is a general sense of being a good person or a faithful believer, but without the detailed self-awareness that spiritual maturity requires. This is why moments of deeper reflection, especially in later life, are not signs of crisis but opportunities for clarity. They allow a person to revisit their journey not with fear, but with honesty. And honesty in spiritual life is never meant to destroy peace. It is meant to establish it on a foundation that is real, not assumed. Because ultimately, the goal is not to create anxiety around sacred things, but to restore the proper sense of their weight. When something is understood correctly, it is neither treated lightly nor feared excessively. It is approached with truth, humility, and awareness. And that is the balance that spiritual maturity slowly forms over time. As this reflection deepens, it becomes clear that the real issue is not only what a person has done in isolated moments, but what has been carried silently over long periods of time. Human life is not shaped only by dramatic events, but also by accumulated patterns, repeated choices, and unresolved interior tensions that slowly become part of a person's normal way of living. And when these patterns are never brought into the light, they can remain hidden even from the person themselves, not because they are invisible, but because they have become familiar. This is where spiritual danger often takes its most subtle form. It is not always found in obvious wrongdoing, but in what has been left unexamined for years. A conscience that is never regularly formed, never seriously reviewed, and never honestly challenged can gradually lose its sensitivity. And when that happens, a person may continue practicing their faith outwardly, while internally missing important aspects of self-awareness that are essential for a healthy spiritual life. The Church's insistence on confession is deeply connected to this reality. It is not simply about listing mistakes. It is about restoring clarity where time and habit may have created confusion. In confession, a person is invited to see their life again with truth, not through the lens of justification or denial, but through honest recognition. And for many, especially after decades of life, this becomes less about new sins and more about rediscovering what has never been fully addressed. This is also why moral responsibility cannot be reduced only to intention. While intention matters greatly, it is not the only factor in spiritual evaluation. A person can act without fully understanding the gravity of their actions, yet still be called to examine them when that understanding becomes available. In other words, awareness increases responsibility, and time often brings greater awareness. This is particularly relevant for those who have lived long lives within the church, where teachings may have been heard repeatedly but not always deeply internalized. Over time, religious practice can become part of identity in a way that feels stable and secure, but identity alone is not the same as examination. A person may sincerely identify as a believer while still carrying areas of life that have never been fully placed before God in truth. And this is where the importance of periodic deep reflection becomes clear. Without it, faith risks becoming habitual rather than conscious, practiced rather than examined, inherited rather than actively lived. In pastoral experience, it is often in moments of slowing down, such as illness, retirement, or quiet personal reflection, that individuals begin to realize how long it has been since they last truly examined their spiritual life in depth. And this realization is not meant to produce regret for its own sake, but to open a pathway towards restoration. Because awareness, even when delayed, still has value. It is never too late to bring truth into areas that have been left in shadow. And this leads naturally to a central spiritual principle. Peace that is built on avoidance is fragile, but peace that is built on truth is stable. A person may feel calm simply because they have stopped looking closely at certain parts of their life, but that calm is not the same as spiritual peace. True peace emerges when a person can stand before God with nothing deliberately hidden, nothing intentionally ignored, and nothing refused from honest examination. This is why the call to reflection is not a call to fear, but a call to clarity. Because clarity does not weaken faith, it strengthens it. It does not destroy confidence, it purifies it. And in the long journey of faith, especially in later years, this kind of clarity becomes one of the most valuable gifts a person can receive. At this final stage of reflection, the question is no longer only about isolated actions or forgotten details, but about the overall direction of the heart. Because a life of faith is not judged only by moments of participation, but by whether the interior life has remained attentive, responsive, and genuinely oriented toward God. Over time, however, it is possible for even sincere believers to slip into a quiet spiritual distance, not through rejection, but through gradual neglect that goes almost unnoticed. This distance does not always announce itself in dramatic ways. It often appears as a slow cooling, where prayer becomes less personal, where reflection becomes less frequent, and where religious practice continues outwardly while the interior movement of the heart becomes less active. A person may still believe, still attend, still identify with faith, and yet something essential in the lived experience of that faith may have become less present than it once was. This is what makes spiritual lukewarmness so serious. It does not break openly with God, but it also does not pursue him with the same depth. It settles into a middle space where nothing is fully rejected, but nothing is fully embraced either. And over long periods of time, this condition can become so normal that it is no longer recognized as a problem at all. It simply feels like stability, when in reality it may be a quiet form of distance. This is why the tradition of confession holds such importance in the life of the Church. It is not only for moments of clear moral failure, but also for moments when the heart needs to be reawakened, when clarity has faded, or when spiritual awareness has weakened over time. It is a space where a person is invited to speak honestly about their life before God, not selectively, defensively, but with openness to truth. In this sense, confession is not only about forgiveness, but also about restoration of vision. It helps a person see what has been ignored, recognize what has been minimized, and bring into the light what has been kept in silence. And for many people in later life, this becomes not a burden, but a release. Because what has been carried internally for years often weighs more than they realize until it is finally spoken. At the heart of all of this is a simple but demanding truth. Spiritual life is not sustained automatically. It requires attention, honesty, and regular self-examination. Without these, even long-standing faith can slowly drift into routine. And when faith becomes routine without reflection, it risks losing the depth that once gave it meaning. But the invitation remains open. No matter how long certain patterns have existed, no matter how much time has passed, the possibility of returning to clarity is never closed. What matters is not how long something has been ignored, but whether a person is willing to bring it before God in truth today. Because in the end, spiritual renewal does not begin with perfection. It begins with honesty. And honesty, even after many years, still has the power to reopen the path toward peace, clarity, and a more authentic relationship with God.